Arts and Science 1B03, Writing, Grammar and Stylistics, Worksheet Corrections. Parallelism. Remember that the repetitive rhythm of parallel structure allows the reader to anticipate what comes next and to keep the overall construction in mind. To form a parallel construction, join nouns with nouns, verbs with verbs, participles with participles, adjectives with adjectives, and so on. Connecting words like and, or, but, and yet are often signals of the need for a parallel construction. A. Using parallelism, improve on the following sentences. For number 1, the correction for the sentence would be, I like to spend my winter holiday skating, skiing, and snowboarding. What we've done here is we've connected participles, which are action words. I haven't bothered putting in I enjoy or as well because we've already said at the beginning of the sentence, I like, so it would be redundant. For number 2, the answer is, the sisters bought shoes, bags, and then a coat for each of themselves. Here we're connecting nouns, shoes, bags, but to resolve the issue of picked up a coat each, I've chosen to keep the adverb then and use the expression for each of themselves. Number 3, the maid has vacuumed the carpet, made the bed, and cleaned the bathroom. What we've done here is we've linked in the past participles of the verbs. So we have the auxiliary verb has vacuumed, has made, has cleaned. To keep this parallel, you need only add the past participle of the verb. Number 4. Please ensure that the candidate is professional, resourceful, and experienced. What we're linking here are adjectives. So we've gotten rid of the last expression in the original sentence and has a lot of experience to experienced. It's shorter, it's cleaner, and it says the same thing. Part B, active or passive. Identify whether the verbs of the underlying clauses are active or passive and indicate the timing of the verb, tense. Number 1, they wrote that the dramatists of the Restoration were little esteemed in those days. The first thing we want to look at is the use of the verb to be in the construction. So we have were little esteemed. And if you could ask yourself by whom, or if it's explicitly stated, you know that it's a passive construction. Now that we know that it's passive, we also have to choose the tense. Let's take a look at the use of the verb to be in the sentence. Were little esteemed in those days. Well, there are many possibilities. You could say are little esteemed, are being little esteemed, had been little esteemed, or would be little esteemed. Were little esteemed is past tense. You'll also notice that in sentence number 1, the use of that introduces a that clause. The type of that clause is a direct object or object clause. They wrote something. They wrote that the dramatists of the Restoration were little esteemed in those days. Number 2, failing health compelled her to leave the college that she had always dreamed of attending. Failing health is the subject of the sentence. So the verb has an explicit subject, compelled someone to leave the college. So this is an active verb. And the tense, failing health compelled, past tense. I'm not asking you to specify what type of past tense or what type of present tense. We're just concerned with present and past here, just for quick identification. Number 3, Gianni thinks that the sound of a guitar could be heard somewhere in the house that day. So we're only looking at the underlined element. The sound of a guitar could be heard by someone, by whom? If we can ask that question, then we say that it's passive. could be heard. In terms of timing, Johnny thinks is in the present tense, but he's talking about a past action. The sound of the guitar could be heard somewhere in the house that day. Past tense. Number 4, the sign says, and here's another that clause, it says something, right? The sign says that we are being watched by a security camera. We are being watched, and by a security camera. By a security camera is the agent. So if you have an agent, then the verb has to be passive voice. We are being watched is present. Number 5, a car hit Mary while she was out walking the poodle that she adopted from the shelter. So a car is the subject, hit is the verb, Mary is the object. It's an active verb. We can't say by whom because we have a subject doing the action, a car. And it's in the past tense. And just a little note about sentence number 5 is that this is probably a sentence that's a spoken or casually spoken sentence. But if you were putting these events in time in more formal writing, you should be using had adopted. I retrieved this sentence from another textbook on grammar. You can also have a look at the Arts and Sci 1 BO3 English Tenses timeline chart in PDF, and I've listed that in the course shell for our course. More on passive voice. C. Write the following sentences in the passive voice. Watch tense use. Let's review the answers first and then talk about the rationale for our answers. Number 1, just kings ruled the nation. That sentence is in the active voice. Just kings is the subject, ruled what? The nation. So to invert this and put it into the passive voice, we would have, the nation was ruled by just kings. Number 2, before takeoff, everyone should place their trays in the upright position and put their baggage in the overhead compartment. To put this in the passive voice, we can say, before takeoff, trays should be placed in the upright position and baggage should be put in the overhead compartment. Number 3, hail pummeled the old car parked on the street. The old car parked on the street was pummeled by hail. Number 4, they should have closed the schools when they released the news of the snowstorm. Schools should have been closed when news of the snowstorm was released. Let's go back to number 1 for a moment. Just kings is the subject, and so it becomes the agent in the passive form. In number 2, the subject is everyone. However, when we wrote the sentence in the passive form, we did not include an agent. Because everyone is what we call an indefinite word, it doesn't refer to anyone specifically. Number 1, just kings, refers to a restricted group of kings or of people, a named group. Everyone doesn't, so we don't have to put in an agent. In fact, in this case, it makes sense at times to use the passive voice. In number 3, just like number 1, we have a named subject, hail. Hail is the subject of the verb pummeled. So, rightly so, we change hail into the agent in the passive voice. The old car parked on the street was pummeled by hail. Hail is the agent. For number 4, the subject is they, but we don't know who they refers to, people in general. They comes up twice in the sentence. They should have closed the schools when they released the news of the snowstorm. This is why we've written the sentence without an agent. No agent is necessary. D, editing. The following sentences contain stylistic and/or grammatical errors. Improve each sentence group by using the style checklist below to guide you. Think about the use of active and passive voice. Have you written statements in positive form? Have you omitted needless words? What about successions of loose sentences? Punctuation? Keeping related words together like modifiers, participial phrases, and relative clauses? Are the tenses sequenced properly? And are any transitions needed? On the next two slides, I've provided examples of one way of improving the sentences, but there are many ways of correcting these same sentences. You should be prepared to discuss what kinds of changes were made in the answers that I provide on the next two slides. Please volunteer your alternatives during the review hour should you have any questions. Number 1. For this part, I'll only read the corrected sentence. Human behavior is the cause of the alarming decline of many species. Again, as I read these, compare to the previous sentence and think about the changes that I've made. See if you can categorize them. Have I replaced a bulky expression with a more streamlined one? Have I removed a relative clause and reworked it in another way? Did I add any punctuation? Number 2, if the keynote speaker is unable to attend the conference, then we will consider hiring someone else as a replacement. As a replacement, I've put in brackets. It's not necessary to put it in, but you may have added that back in. Number 3, he realized that the attacker had broken into the house earlier and that the police came minutes after he had made the discovery. Number 4, the electrosynergetic laser, which was losing power by the minute, fell to the floor as Clara leaped to her feet and grabbed it. Or, the electrosynergetic laser, which was losing power by the minute, fell to the floor as Clara, leaping to her feet, grabbed it. Number 5, we noticed that most of the people at the party ate scallops and some ate shrimp, while the guest of honor, due to his shellfish allergy, ate pierogies instead. Number 6, the article shows that the court made an appeal because the Crown did not provide the right evidence. Number 7, Salvador Dali was already an accomplished artist when he began to use stereoscopic images and holography in his varied work on nature. Because some high school students use social media during classes, they miss out on teacher-delivered content. These teachers must discourage this behavior in a way that does not demean or patronize students. Section E, paragraphs. Identify the topic of the paragraph sets below. Can you find any transitions in the paragraph sets? Explain why the paragraphs have unity. Underline any transitions used. For this paragraph, which I'll let you read to yourself, the topic is "The meme is a speech act." To compose a topic sentence, the writer makes an assertion about the topic. The writer's purpose is to explain and enforce the topic sentence. In the case of this paragraph, the writer says, "I argue that speech acts can also apply to memes." This paragraph is unified because assertions are made in the paragraph to explain, by comparison, how the meme functions as a speech act, the same creator-receiver relationship, and the parameters of it, as well as they have the same communicative function. Transitions are often adverbial expressions and conjunctions that you've already seen and we've already explored in previous lessons. Transitions signal a turn in thought. Although and whereas concede a point. Because and for establish cause. But, however, and conversely help us change direction. Can you find any transitions used in this paragraph? Or might you suggest some? Paragraph 2. Topic. For this paragraph, I'd like you to ask yourself how the topic differs from that in the previous paragraph. Please share with the class your findings in the review hour. This is meant for discussion. With regard to unity, Please do the same. We should discuss this in the review hour together. Some transitions found in this reading are to illustrate this, unless, because, and then, and since. Set 2. This is from the reading by Virginia Woolf, The Death of the Moth. The topic. Woolf establishes the main character in this paragraph, a moth that flies by day and seems to be content with life. This is a very different piece of writing from the academic essay paragraphs you've just read. Woolf's essay is highly descriptive and personal. Her assertions about the moth are framed by the description of the world outside. The world outside is described using language that excites, in stark contrast to the description of the moth. Soaring, vigor, clamor, vociferation. Therefore, this paragraph is unified because Woolf establishes who the main focus of her observation is and describes what it is not by contrasting it to the excitement she observes in the outdoor surroundings. Notice the use at the beginning of the paragraph of "they do not excite" and "a tremendously exciting experience." As for transitions, what purpose do words like "suddenly" and "nevertheless" serve in this paragraph? Paragraph 2. For this paragraph, I'd like you to find the topic. How does the topic differ from that in the previous paragraph? Please share with the class in the review hour. This is meant for discussion. As for unity, again, use the examples on the previous slide and find a way of justifying why the paragraph is unified. The transitions after and even are present in this paragraph. Find other transitions if there are any.